Black woman helps a wealthy man in a wheelchair at the airport. He instantly falls for her and makes a bold proposal. But when he notices the ring on her finger, his world shatters. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The announcement echoed through the busy terminal, barely audible above the cacophony of rolling luggage, hurried footsteps, and distant conversations. Final boarding call for Flight 247 to San Francisco. Maya Reynolds glanced at her watch and sighed. Her flight was delayed another 2 hours, which meant she had plenty of time to find something to eat and perhaps finish the book she'd been reading. The Chicago O'Hare International Airport was packed with travelers, all seeking refuge from the unexpected blizzard that had grounded several flights and delayed countless others. Maya pulled her carry-on suitcase toward the food court, her mind preoccupied with the upcoming presentation she would deliver to potential investors in San Francisco. At 34, she had finally gathered enough courage and capital to launch her own architectural firm after years of working under others. This meeting could change everything. The food court was a sea of faces, tired, impatient, resigned. Maya scanned the area for an empty table, but every seat seemed occupied. She was about to give up and find a spot on the floor against a wall when she noticed a man in a wheelchair struggling to balance a tray of food while maneuvering through the crowd. Without hesitation, Maya approached him. "Excuse me, would you like some help?" The man looked up, his deep blue eyes meeting hers with a mix of surprise and relief. He was strikingly handsome, with salt and pepper hair that accentuated sharp cheekbones and a strong jawline. His expensive suit and watch suggested wealth, but there was a vulnerability in his expression that caught Maya off guard. "That would be incredibly kind of you," he replied, his voice deep and smooth. "I thought I could manage, but this crowd is more challenging than I anticipated." Maya took the tray from his hands. "I'm happy to help. Do you have a table?" "Yes, over there by the window. I managed to secure one before getting food." She walked beside him as he expertly navigated his wheelchair through the throng of travelers. The table he had claimed was small but offered a view of the snow-covered runways. "I'm Daniel Whitman," he said as they reached the table, "and you've just saved me from what would have been a very embarrassing spill." "Maya Reynolds," she replied, setting his tray down. "And I'm happy to help." Daniel gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Would you like to join me? It seems cruel to help me and then send you back into the chaos of finding a seat." Maya hesitated for a moment. She had planned to grab something quick and find a quiet corner to review her presentation, but there was something about Daniel's genuine smile that made her reconsider. "Thank you. I think I will," she said, placing her carry-on beside the table. "Let me just grab something to eat." When she returned with her own tray, Daniel had arranged the table neatly, moving the condiments to make space for her food. "So, Maya Reynolds, where are you headed today?" he asked as she settled into her seat. "San Francisco. Business meeting. But my flight's delayed because of the storm." "San Francisco?" Daniel's eyebrows rose. "That's where I'm headed too, although I'm on a private flight, so I'm just waiting for the weather to clear enough for takeoff." Maya couldn't help but smile. Of course he had a private plane. Everything about him, from his perfectly tailored suit to his sophisticated manner, screamed wealth. "Private plane, huh? That must be nice." Daniel chuckled. "It has its perks, though today it doesn't seem to be much of an advantage. We're all grounded equally by Mother Nature." He took a sip of his coffee. "What kind of business takes you to San Francisco?" "I'm an architect. I'm meeting with potential investors for my new firm." Maya surprised herself with how easily she shared this information with a stranger. Something about Daniel put her at ease. "An architect? That's fascinating. I've always been intrigued by the way architecture shapes our experience of the world." His eyes lit up with genuine interest. "What's your specialty?" For the next 30 minutes, Maya found herself engaged in one of the most stimulating conversations she'd had in months. Daniel wasn't just politely listening. He was asking insightful questions about sustainable design and the balance between functionality and aesthetics. It turned out he had a background in urban development and had funded several projects similar to what Maya was proposing. "You know," he said, leaning forward slightly, "I might be interested in hearing more about your firm. My foundation is always looking for innovative projects to support." Maya blinked, caught off guard by the potential opportunity that had quite literally wheeled into her path. "I'd be happy to tell you more," she said, trying to maintain her professional composure despite the excitement bubbling inside her. As they continued their conversation, Maya couldn't help but notice the way Daniel's hands moved expressively when he spoke about subjects he was passionate about. There was a grace to him that transcended his physical limitations. She found herself wondering what had happened to put him in a wheelchair, but she didn't ask. Some questions were too personal for a first encounter. "So, what takes you to San Francisco?" Maya finally asked, realizing she'd been doing most of the talking. A shadow seemed to pass over Daniel's face. "Family business primarily, and a bit of personal closure." He glanced out the window at the falling snow, his expression momentarily distant. "My brother lived there. He passed away 6 months ago." "I'm so sorry," Maya said, the mood shifting palpably. Daniel turned back to her with a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Thank you. It's been challenging. We were very close despite our differences." He paused, as if debating whether to continue. "This is actually my first time going back to the city since the funeral." Maya reached across the table and briefly touched his hand, a gesture of comfort that felt natural despite their short acquaintance. "That must be difficult." Daniel looked down at her hand on his, and something in his expression softened. "It is, but strangely, talking to you has made today easier." He turned his hand over and gave hers a gentle squeeze before releasing it. "Sometimes the universe puts the right person in your path just when you need them." They fell into a comfortable silence, both watching the snow fall outside the large airport windows. The announcement system crackled to life again, updating passengers on further delays. "It seems we're both going to be here a while longer," Daniel said. "Would you mind if I asked what book you're reading?" He nodded toward the paperback peeking out of her bag. Maya pulled out the novel, a historical fiction piece set in 1920s Paris. "It's my third time reading it. Something about the story keeps drawing me back." "Ah, I love that one," Daniel said, surprising her. "The author captures the essence of post-war Paris brilliantly. Have you read her other novels?" And just like that, they were deep in conversation again, discussing literature, then art, then travel. Maya was struck by how easily they moved from one topic to another, finding common interests and respectfully debating differences. Time seemed to slip away unnoticed. It wasn't until Maya's phone buzzed with an update from her airline that she realized they'd been talking for nearly 2 hours. "It looks like they're estimating another hour delay," she said, checking the notification. Daniel pulled out his own phone. "Let me check with my pilot." He made a brief call, his tone shifting to something more businesslike but still cordial. After hanging up, he looked at Maya thoughtfully. "It seems we're in the same boat, or rather the same lack of aircraft. The weather isn't clearing as quickly as they hoped." He hesitated for a moment, then continued. "I have an idea, but please feel free to decline. I have access to the executive lounge. It's much quieter there, and the chairs are significantly more comfortable. Would you like to join me while we wait?" Maya considered the offer. Under normal circumstances, she might have been more cautious about spending more time with a man she'd just met. But there was something undeniably genuine about Daniel, and the prospect of comfortable seating and quieter surroundings was tempting. "That would be lovely, thank you," she said. As they gathered their belongings, Daniel maneuvered his wheelchair with practiced ease. Maya noticed how other travelers unconsciously moved out of his way, some with sympathy in their eyes that seemed misplaced given Daniel's confident demeanor. The executive lounge was a stark contrast to the crowded terminal: plush seating, muted lighting, and a hushed atmosphere that felt almost like stepping into another world. A concierge greeted Daniel by name, suggesting he was a frequent visitor. They settled into a quiet corner with large windows overlooking the runway. As a server brought them complimentary drinks, Maya couldn't help but feel slightly out of place in this world of privilege. Yet Daniel had a way of making her feel like she belonged. "So, tell me more about this presentation you're preparing," he said, sipping a sparkling water. "If you don't mind discussing it, of course." Maya hesitated only briefly before pulling out her tablet. "Actually, I'd value your perspective, given your background in urban development." For the next hour, they discussed her business plan in detail. Daniel offered insights that were both practical and innovative, asking questions that helped Maya refine her approach. His suggestions weren't condescending or controlling. They were collaborative, respectful of her vision while enhancing its potential impact. "You know, Maya," Daniel said, leaning back in his wheelchair, "I'm truly impressed. Your understanding of both the artistic and functional aspects of architecture is remarkable. The investors would be fools not to support your firm." Maya felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the lounge's comfortable temperature. It wasn't just the compliment that affected her. It was the way Daniel saw her, as a professional equal, a visionary in her own right. "Thank you," she said simply. "That means a lot, especially coming from someone with your experience." Daniel smiled, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. "I should be thanking you. This is the most engaging conversation I've had in months. You've turned what could have been an insufferable delay into a pleasure." The announcement system in the lounge discreetly informed them that several flights, including Maya's, were now boarding. The weather had cleared enough for takeoff. "That's my cue," Maya said, feeling an unexpected twinge of disappointment that their time together was ending. "Mine as well," Daniel replied, checking a message on his phone. "My pilot just confirmed we're cleared for departure." As they gathered their belongings, a moment of awkwardness descended, the kind that comes when a meaningful encounter reaches its natural conclusion, but neither party wants it to end. Daniel broke the silence. "Maya, I know this might seem forward, but I'd like to continue our conversation in San Francisco. Would you be open to having dinner tomorrow evening? I know an excellent restaurant with a view of the bay." Maya felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just attraction, though Daniel was undeniably appealing. It was the rare feeling of connecting with someone who understood her passion, who engaged with her ideas, who saw her. "I'd like that," she said with a smile. "Though I should warn you, I'll be significantly more jet-lagged than I am now." Daniel laughed, a warm sound that seemed to fill the space between them. "I'm willing to risk it." He handed her his business card, which bore simply his name and a phone number. "Text me when you land safely, and we can arrange details for tomorrow." As they parted ways at the lounge exit, Daniel heading toward the private aviation terminal and Maya toward her gate, she felt a curious sense of anticipation. It was as if a door had unexpectedly opened in her carefully structured life, offering a glimpse of something new and potentially wonderful. What Maya couldn't know as she boarded her commercial flight to San Francisco was that Daniel Whitman was experiencing the same sensation. And neither of them could have predicted the truth that waited to be discovered, a connection that had begun long before their chance meeting in a crowded airport food court. San Francisco greeted Maya with its characteristic fog and a gentle drizzle that seemed to blur the edges of the city skyline. Her hotel room offered a partial view of the bay, though the Golden Gate Bridge was obscured by the mist hovering over the water. After a quick shower to wash away the weariness of travel, Maya stood at the window, watching the fog shift and swirl, revealing glimpses of the city she had visited many times before. This time felt different, though. There was a heaviness to her return that she hadn't anticipated. It had been 6 months since she'd been here, 6 months since Marcus's funeral, 6 months of grieving the man she had once loved deeply, even though their relationship had ended almost a year before his unexpected death. Maya touched the simple silver ring that hung on a chain around her neck. It wasn't an engagement ring. Marcus had never proposed. It was a promise ring he had given her during their second year together, a symbol of what might have been, before his work consumed him and the distance between them grew insurmountable. She hadn't worn it during their breakup or in the months that followed, but after his death she had found it while packing away mementos of their relationship, and something had compelled her to keep it close. Perhaps it was guilt, the persistent thought that if she had stayed, if she had been more patient with his increasingly frequent absences, he might still be alive. "Stop it," she murmured to herself, turning away from the window. She couldn't keep torturing herself with what-ifs. Marcus had made his choices, and she had made hers. His fatal heart attack at 36 had been a genetic time bomb, according to the doctors, unrelated to stress or lifestyle. Her phone buzzed with a text message, pulling her from the spiral of guilt-laden memories. It was Daniel. "Landed safely in SF. Hope your flight was uneventful. Still up for dinner at 7? I can send a car for you." Maya smiled, feeling a flutter of anticipation that momentarily pushed aside her melancholy. Her encounter with Daniel at the airport had been unexpected in every way. There was something about him that drew her in, an intelligence and warmth that transcended his obvious wealth and privilege. After exchanging texts when her flight landed, they had confirmed dinner plans for her first evening in San Francisco. "Landed safely too," she typed back. "Dinner at 7 sounds perfect. No need for a car. I can meet you at the restaurant. Just send me the address." Daniel responded almost immediately with the restaurant details and a comment that made her smile. "The maitre d' is a bit of a snob, but the view and the risotto make up for it." Maya spent the remainder of the afternoon preparing for her investor meeting scheduled for the following morning. She rehearsed her presentation, refined her talking points, and tried to focus on the future of her architectural firm rather than the ghosts of her past that seemed to linger in the San Francisco air. At 6:30, she called a rideshare to take her to the restaurant. She had chosen a simple black dress that was professional enough for a business dinner but elegant enough for the upscale venue Daniel had selected. As the car wound through the hills of San Francisco, Maya found herself oddly nervous. Not the familiar pre-presentation jitters she was accustomed to, but something different, more personal. The restaurant was perched on a cliff overlooking the bay, its glass walls offering panoramic views of the water and the city skyline. As Maya gave her name to the hostess, she was immediately led to a corner table where Daniel was waiting. He looked up as she approached, and the genuine pleasure that lit his face sent a warm current through her. He was even more handsome than she remembered, his tailored navy suit accentuating broad shoulders, his silver-streaked hair neatly styled. The wheelchair was the same sleek, minimalist design she had noticed at the airport, clearly custom-made and expensive. "Maya," he said warmly, taking her hand as she reached the table. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, settling into the chair across from him. "This place is stunning." "Wait until sunset," Daniel said with a smile. "The view transforms completely." A waiter appeared with menus and a wine list, treating Daniel with the deference reserved for valued regular customers. After Maya selected a glass of Chardonnay and Daniel opted for sparkling water, they were left alone to peruse the menu. "So, tell me about your meeting tomorrow," Daniel said, his interest clearly sincere. "Are you feeling prepared?" Maya appreciated that he remembered and cared enough to ask. "I am, actually. Our conversation yesterday helped me refine a few points in my presentation. I think the investors will be impressed." "They'd be fools not to be," Daniel said with conviction. "Your vision is exactly what the industry needs right now." As they discussed her plans, Maya found herself once again drawn into the easy, intellectually stimulating conversation that had characterized their airport encounter. Daniel asked perceptive questions and offered insights that suggested a deep understanding of both business and architecture. By the time their appetizers arrived, a ceviche for Maya and a beet salad for Daniel, They had moved on to discussing the city's architectural evolution. San Francisco has always struggled with balancing preservation and progress, Daniel observed, gesturing toward the skyline visible through the restaurant's windows. Every new building is a negotiation between honoring the past and embracing the future. That's what I love about this city, Maya said. It's constantly reinventing itself while maintaining its essential character. She paused, suddenly aware of how much she had missed San Francisco, despite the painful memories it now held. Daniel seemed to sense the shift in her mood. "You've spent time here before?" Maya nodded, taking a sip of her wine to gather her thoughts. "I lived here for almost 3 years. I moved back to Chicago about a year ago." "What prompted the move back?" Daniel asked, his tone gentle, as if he sensed he was treading on personal territory. Maya considered how much to share. Something about Daniel made her want to be honest, but she wasn't ready to excavate all of her grief with someone she had just met, no matter how comfortable he made her feel. "A relationship that didn't work out," she said simply, "and an opportunity at a prestigious firm in Chicago that was too good to pass up." Daniel nodded, not pressing for details. Life has a way of guiding us where we need to go, even when the path seems unclear at the time. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as their main courses arrived. Daniel shared amusing anecdotes about his travels, and Maya found herself laughing more than she had in months. As predicted, the sunset transformed the view, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks that reflected off the bay waters. "It's magnificent," Maya said, momentarily distracted from their conversation by the spectacle of color outside. "Worth the price of admission, isn't it?" Daniel smiled, watching her reaction. "I try to catch this view whenever I'm in town. It never gets old." As the sky darkened and the city lights began to twinkle across the bay, Maya found herself opening up more about her career path, her passion for sustainable architecture, and the challenges she had faced as a woman in a male-dominated field. "The number of times I've walked into a meeting and been mistaken for someone's assistant is staggering," she said, shaking her head. "But it's getting better, slowly." "The industry's loss is ultimately your gain," Daniel observed. "Anyone who underestimates you is giving you an opportunity to exceed their expectations spectacularly." Maya raised her glass to that sentiment. "I'll drink to exceeding expectations." As they touched glasses, Daniel's eyes met hers with an intensity that caught her off guard. There was admiration there, certainly, but also something deeper, more searching. "I hope this isn't too forward," he said after a moment, "but I find myself incredibly drawn to you, Maya. Your intelligence, your passion, your resilience, they're captivating." Maya felt a flush rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the wine. "I'm equally drawn to you," she admitted, "which is surprising, given that we only met yesterday." Daniel smiled, the warmth reaching his eyes. Sometimes life delivers the most unexpected gifts in the most ordinary packaging, like a chance meeting in an airport food court. As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed effortlessly from professional ambitions to personal philosophies. Daniel spoke about his foundation's work in educational access and community development, revealing a genuine commitment to using his wealth for positive change. "Money is just a tool," he said, absently tracing the rim of his water glass. "What matters is how you use it to shape the world around you." "Is that why you focus on education?" Maya asked, fascinated by this glimpse into his values. "Partly," Daniel replied, "but it's also personal. My mother was a teacher in an underserved community. She believed education was the great equalizer, the one thing that could truly change a person's trajectory." His expression softened with memory. "She died when I was 22, but I've tried to honor her belief in my work." "She sounds like an extraordinary woman," Maya said gently. "She was," Daniel agreed. "She raised my brother and me on her own after our father died. Worked 2 jobs sometimes, but never complained. She taught us that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about how you rise afterward." At the mention of his brother, a shadow seemed to pass over Daniel's features. Maya remembered what he had said at the airport about coming to San Francisco for closure after his brother's death. "You mentioned your brother yesterday," she said carefully. "I'm sorry for your loss." Daniel's eyes, when they met hers, held a complex mixture of grief, gratitude for her acknowledgement, and something else she couldn't quite decipher. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Marcus was complicated, brilliant, driven, sometimes frustratingly stubborn, but he was the best friend I ever had despite our differences." Maya's heart skipped a beat at the name, but she told herself it had to be a coincidence. Marcus was a common enough name, yet a strange uneasiness began to settle in her stomach. "How did he—" she began, then stopped, unsure if the question was too intrusive. "Heart attack," Daniel supplied, his voice steady but tinged with sorrow. "Completely unexpected. He was only 36. The uneasiness in Maya's stomach crystallized into a cold certainty. The details were too specific to be coincidental. Marcus Whitman, 36, heart attack. The pieces fell into place with a clarity that left her momentarily speechless. Daniel seemed to mistake her silence for simple sympathy. "It's still difficult to talk about," he continued. "We had unresolved issues when he died. Things I wish I'd said differently." Maya found her voice, though it sounded strange to her own ears. "What kind of work did your brother do?" "He was in finance," Daniel replied. "Investment banking specifically. He was extraordinarily successful, though the hours were punishing." Each confirmation sent a wave of disbelief through Maya. Marcus had never mentioned a brother named Daniel. He had spoken of family only in the vaguest terms, deflecting questions with practiced ease. He had told her he was an only child, that his parents were both deceased, that he had no family to speak of. But then, Marcus had always been private to the point of secretiveness about his personal life. It had been one of the issues that ultimately led to their breakup. His compartmentalization, his unwillingness to fully let her in. "Maya?" Daniel's concerned voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you all right? You've gone quite pale." She forced a smile, though her mind was racing. "I'm fine, just a bit tired from the travel, I think." Maya's fingers instinctively went to the silver ring hanging beneath her dress. The world seemed to narrow to just this table, this moment, this impossible coincidence. Or was it a coincidence at all? Had Daniel known who she was from the beginning? No, she decided, studying his face. His concern appeared genuine. There was no hint of recognition when she'd told him her name, no suggestion that he was playing some elaborate game. If Daniel knew that she was his brother's ex-girlfriend, he was an extraordinary actor. "Are you sure you're all right?" Daniel asked, his brow furrowed with concern. "We could call it a night if you're not feeling well." Maya took a deep breath, buying herself time to think. Should she tell him the truth now? The words stuck in her throat. How did one even begin such a conversation? "By the way, I dated your brother for 3 years, but he never once mentioned you existed?" "I'm fine, really," she said instead, reaching for her water glass. "Just a momentary dizzy spell. It's been a long day." Daniel didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. "Travel can be exhausting, especially with delays like we had." The waiter arrived to clear their plates and offer the dessert menu, providing a welcome interruption. Maya declined dessert but accepted coffee, needing the caffeine to help her process this revelation. "Tell me more about your brother," she said when they were alone again, unable to help herself. She needed to understand this mystery, to reconcile the Marcus she had known with this new information. A flicker of surprise crossed Daniel's face, but he seemed pleased by her interest. "Marcus was intense, brilliant but restless. We were close as children, especially after our father died, but we took very different paths as adults." "How so?" Maya prompted gently. Daniel's expression turned reflective. I followed a more conventional route: college, MBA, corporate career. Marcus was always more of a maverick. He dropped out of college his junior year to work at a startup, then parlayed that into a career in finance. He had an intuitive understanding of markets that couldn't be taught. Maya nodded, recognizing this description of Marcus's professional brilliance. And personally, what was he like outside of work? Daniel sighed, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. That's harder to answer. Marcus kept his personal life separate, private, even from family. A hint of old pain crossed his features. After our mother died, he became more distant, focused entirely on building his career, his wealth. We still saw each other for holidays, occasional dinners when business brought us to the same city, but there was always a wall. Maya's coffee arrived and she wrapped her hands around the warm cup, anchoring herself. That must have been difficult, she said, thinking of how Marcus had compartmentalized his life with her as well, keeping his work separate, rarely introducing her to colleagues, making excuses when she suggested weekend trips to meet what little family he claimed to have. It was, Daniel admitted, especially after my accident. He gestured to his wheelchair. 5 years ago, I was in a car crash that left me paralyzed from the waist down. Marcus helped financially, insisted on paying for the best specialists, the best equipment, but emotionally, he remained distant. It was as if he couldn't bear to see me vulnerable. 5 years ago, Maya did the mental math. She and Marcus had already been dating then, yet he had never mentioned a brother, let alone one who had suffered such a life-altering injury. The depth of his deception made her head spin. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it, though the words felt inadequate for the complex tangle of emotions she was experiencing. "Were things unresolved between you when he died?" Daniel's gaze turned toward the city lights reflecting on the bay. "We had an argument the last time we spoke, about his lifestyle, his choices. I felt he was working himself into an early grave." His voice caught slightly. "Turns out I was right, just not in the way I expected." The irony was almost too much to bear. Maya remembered her own arguments with Marcus about his punishing work schedule, the way he would disappear into 18-hour days at the office, emerging exhausted and emotionally unavailable. "I keep wondering if I could have done something differently," Daniel continued, his voice low. "If I had approached him differently, been less judgmental, maybe he would have listened." The guilt in his voice mirrored Maya's own thoughts since Marcus's death. She had tortured herself with similar questions. If she had stayed, if she had been more understanding of his work demands, could she have somehow prevented his death? "From what you've described," Maya said carefully, "it sounds like Marcus made his own choices. You can't blame yourself for that." Daniel looked up, meeting her eyes with a sad smile. "Logically, I know that. Emotionally, well, grief isn't logical, is it?" "No," Maya agreed softly. "It's not." For a moment they sat in silence, connected by a shared grief neither fully understood the extent of. Maya felt the weight of her unspoken truth between them, growing heavier by the minute. "Enough about my family tragedy," Daniel said finally, his tone lightening with visible effort. "Tell me about yours. Do you have siblings?" The question was innocent, but it nearly undid Maya. The Marcus she had known, or thought she had known, would ask her similar questions early in their relationship, showing interest in her background while deflecting questions about his own. It had seemed like genuine interest at the time, but now she wondered if it had been a calculated strategy to keep the conversation away from his own life. "One sister," she answered, forcing herself back to the present. "She's a pediatrician in Chicago. We're close, though we don't see each other as often as we'd like. My parents are still in Michigan, where we grew up." As she spoke about her family, Maya felt a growing sense of unreality. She was sitting across from the brother of the man she had once imagined spending her life with, a brother whose existence had been deliberately hidden from her. Each moment that passed without acknowledging this truth felt like another small betrayal. "I should tell you something," she began, the words tumbling out before she could reconsider. Daniel looked at her expectantly, his blue eyes, so unlike Marcus's dark brown ones, focused intently on her face. But the waiter chose that moment to return with their check, effectively interrupting what might have been a life-altering confession. By the time he left, Maya's courage had faltered. She needed time to process this, to decide how to approach such an impossible conversation. "Sorry, you were saying?" Daniel prompted. Maya shook her head. "It's nothing important. Just thank you for a lovely evening. It's been a welcome distraction from pre-meeting nerves." If Daniel sensed there was more to it, he didn't press. "The pleasure was entirely mine, Maya. Your company has been the highlight of what would otherwise have been a rather melancholy trip." As they prepared to leave, Daniel insisted on covering the bill despite Maya's protests. "Please, allow me this small gesture. Consider it thanks for rescuing me from wearing my lunch at the airport yesterday." Outside the restaurant, the San Francisco night was cool and clear, the fog having lifted to reveal a sky scattered with stars. A sleek black car waited at the curb, its driver stepping out to assist Daniel if needed, though he maneuvered into the back seat with practiced ease. "Can we drop you at your hotel?" Daniel offered. Maya hesitated only briefly before accepting. As they drove through the city streets, she found herself stealing glances at Daniel's profile, searching for resemblances to Marcus. They were there, subtle but unmistakable. The same strong jawline, the same way of gesturing with their hands when making a point. But where Marcus had been all sharp edges and restless energy, Daniel had a centered calm, a thoughtfulness that drew her in. "Would you be free for dinner again tomorrow night?" Daniel asked as they neared her hotel. "I'd love to hear how your meeting goes." Maya knew she should decline. The situation was becoming increasingly complicated, and spending more time with Daniel before she decided how to handle the truth would only make things worse. Yet the thought of not seeing him again created an unexpected ache. "I'd like that," she heard herself say. "Though I should warn you, if the meeting goes poorly, I may not be the most cheerful company." Daniel smiled, the expression warming his entire face. "I'll take my chances. Success or setback, I'd still rather spend the evening with you than alone with my thoughts in a hotel room." The car pulled up to the entrance of Maya's hotel, and the driver came around to open her door. "Until tomorrow, then," Daniel said, taking her hand briefly. His touch was warm, his grip firm but gentle. "Until tomorrow," Maya echoed, stepping out into the night air. As the car pulled away, Maya stood for a moment on the sidewalk, watching its taillights disappear around a corner. The rational part of her brain was screaming that she was making a mistake, that she needed to extract herself from this situation before it became even more tangled. But another part, a part she thought had died with Marcus, felt awakened, curious, drawn to Daniel in a way that both thrilled and terrified her. Back in her hotel room, Maya kicked off her heels and sank onto the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the evening's revelations. She pulled out her phone and navigated to her photo gallery, scrolling back through the months until she found what she was looking for: a picture of Marcus, taken on his last birthday. He was smiling reluctantly at the camera, uncomfortable being the center of attention, as always. "Who were you, really?" she whispered to the image. "And why didn't you ever tell me about Daniel?" The photo offered no answers, only the same enigmatic half-smile Marcus had worn throughout their relationship, present but somehow always holding something back. Maya set her phone aside and walked to the window, gazing out at the city lights. San Francisco had once represented possibility to her, a fresh start, a chance to build something meaningful with Marcus. Now it was layered with loss, betrayal, and this new, confusing connection to Daniel. She thought of the silver ring hanging around her neck, hidden beneath her dress. It had been a symbol of promise, of commitment. Now it felt more like a talisman of deception, Marcus had given it to her, saying it represented his heart, yet he had kept entire parts of himself locked away from her, including the existence of a brother he clearly cared for, despite their complicated relationship. Tomorrow she would need to face Daniel with the truth. The thought made her stomach knot with anxiety. How would he react to learning that she had been involved with Marcus? Would he feel betrayed, misled? Would he think she had approached him at the airport knowing who he was? Or worse, what if he already knew? What if this entire encounter had been orchestrated and Daniel was testing her for some reason of his own? No, she decided, recalling the genuine warmth in his eyes, the open way he had spoken about Marcus. If Daniel was playing some kind of game, he was a master manipulator beyond anything she could imagine. And despite the shocking revelation about his identity, her instincts told her that Daniel Whitman was exactly what he appeared to be, a thoughtful, intelligent man grieving his brother and unexpectedly connecting with a stranger in an airport. A stranger who happened to be the woman his brother had loved and left, without ever acknowledging his existence. Maya sighed and began preparing for bed, her mind still churning with questions. Tomorrow would bring her investor meeting and then another dinner with Daniel. Between those two events, she needed to find the courage to tell him the truth, whatever the consequences might be. As she drifted towards sleep, it occurred to her that perhaps this wasn't just coincidence or fate. Perhaps in some strange way Marcus had brought them together, his final posthumous attempt to reconcile the compartmentalized pieces of his life. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through San Francisco's lingering fog. Maya woke early, her sleep having been fitful and filled with dreams where Marcus and Daniel morphed into one another, their faces blending in impossible ways. She rubbed her eyes, trying to shake off the disorientation as she prepared for her investor meeting. The hot shower helped clear her mind, and by the time she was dressed in her carefully chosen charcoal suit, Maya had compartmentalized her personal dilemma. For the next few hours, she would focus solely on her presentation, on securing the funding that would allow her architectural vision to become reality. She would deal with the Daniel situation afterward. Her phone buzzed with a text message as she was gathering her presentation materials. "Good luck today. They'd be fools not to invest in your vision. Looking forward to hearing all about it tonight. Daniel." The simple message sent a complicated ripple of emotions through her. Gratitude for his support, warmth at his genuine interest in her success, anxiety about the conversation that awaited them, and a persistent, underlying attraction that refused to be silenced by the bizarre circumstances. "Thank you," she texted back. "That means a lot." The investors' offices were located in a sleek high-rise with panoramic views of the bay. Maya arrived 15 minutes early, using the time to center herself and review her key points one last time. When the receptionist led her into the conference room, she was ready, her professional persona firmly in place. 5 people sat around the polished conference table, 3 men and 2 women, all wearing expressions of polite interest but revealing little else. Maya recognized Howard Chen, the lead investor, from her preliminary video calls. He stood to greet her with a firm handshake. "Ms. Reynolds, welcome. We've been looking forward to your presentation." Maya smiled confidently. "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chen. I'm excited to share my vision with all of you." As she connected her laptop to the room's presentation system, Maya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that always preceded these moments. This was where she excelled, articulating her passion for sustainable, human-centered architecture, painting a picture of buildings that served communities while respecting the environment. For the next 40 minutes, she guided the investors through her business plan, her design philosophy, and the specific projects she hoped to pursue with their backing. She referenced her previous work, emphasizing the awards and recognition she had received, and outlined the niche she intended to fill in the market. Throughout the presentation, Maya was aware of a newfound clarity and confidence in her delivery. Some of it stemmed from the refinements she had made based on her conversation with Daniel. His insights had helped her strengthen certain aspects of her argument. But there was something else, too, a sense of purpose that felt sharper than before. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the questions began. They were probing but not hostile, exploring the practicalities of her vision rather than challenging its fundamental value. Maya answered each inquiry directly, neither overpromising nor underselling her capabilities. "Your approach to community integration is particularly interesting," said Vanessa Kapoor, one of the female investors. "How do you balance community input with your own design vision?" It was a good question, one that cut to the heart of Maya's philosophy. "I see design as a conversation, not a monologue," she replied. "My job is to listen as much as to create. The best buildings emerge from a genuine understanding of how they'll be used and by whom." The discussion continued for another 30 minutes, delving into financial projections, timelines, and potential challenges. By the time Howard Chen stood to indicate the meeting was concluding, Maya felt cautiously optimistic. "Thank you, Ms. Reynolds," Chen said, shaking her hand again. "You've given us a lot to consider. We'll be in touch within the week with our decision." "I appreciate your time and consideration," Maya responded. "I look forward to hearing from you." As she packed up her materials, Vanessa Kapoor approached her. "That was impressive," she said quietly. "Between us, I think you've got a very good chance. Howard doesn't usually ask so many questions unless he's seriously interested." Maya smiled gratefully. "Thank you for saying so, and for your thoughtful questions." Outside the building, Maya took a deep breath of the cool San Francisco air. The presentation had gone well, possibly even very well, but now she had to face the more daunting challenge of her dinner with Daniel. She spent the afternoon walking the city, reacquainting herself with streets and neighborhoods that held both happy and painful memories. She passed the small cafe where she and Marcus had often had Sunday brunch, the park where they had sometimes picnicked on rare sunny days, the bookstore where they'd spent hours browsing separately before comparing their finds over coffee. It struck her that even these memories were now tinged with uncertainty. Had Marcus ever mentioned a brother to her, and she had simply forgotten? No, she would have remembered something so significant. Had he ever been about to share this part of his life but been interrupted or lost his nerve? She couldn't recall any such moment. The reality was simpler and more painful. Marcus had deliberately kept his family, at minimum, a brother he clearly cared about, secret from her, even as their relationship had grown serious enough that they had discussed living together, even children. By the time Maya returned to her hotel to prepare for dinner, she had resolved to tell Daniel the truth immediately. No more evasions, no more half-truths. Before they ordered drinks, before they fell into another engaging conversation, she would explain exactly who she was and how she had known Marcus. She chose a deep blue dress for the evening, professional but less severe than her suit, with a scoop neckline that revealed the silver ring on its chain. She had decided to wear it visibly, both as proof of her connection to Marcus and as a visual aid to her explanation. Daniel had chosen a different restaurant for their second dinner, this one a cozy, elegant space known for its innovative cuisine. When Maya arrived, he was already seated at a corner table, his face lighting up as he saw her approach. "Maya," he greeted her warmly. "You look lovely. How did the meeting go?" She took a deep breath as she sat across from him. "Before we talk about that, there's something I need to tell you, Daniel." His expression turned curious, an eyebrow rising slightly. "That sounds serious." "It is." Maya's fingers went to the silver ring at her throat. "This is going to sound impossible, but I knew your brother Marcus." Daniel's expression shifted from curiosity to confusion. "You knew Marcus? How? Through work?" Maya shook her head, her heart pounding. "No, not through work. We were together. For 3 years. We broke up about a year before he died." Daniel stared at her, his blue eyes widening with shock. For a long moment he said nothing, and Maya could almost see him processing this information, attempting to reconcile it with everything he knew, or thought he knew, about his brother. "That's not possible," he said finally, his voice low and controlled. "Marcus never mentioned being in a serious relationship. If he had been with someone for 3 years, I would have known." Maya's throat tightened. "He never told me about you either. He said he was an only child, that his parents were both deceased. He never mentioned having a brother, certainly not one he cared about as much as you clearly cared about him." Daniel's expression hardened, a flash of anger crossing his features. "Is this some kind of joke? Did you know who I was at the airport?" "No," Maya said quickly, leaning forward. "I swear, I had no idea who you were until last night, when you mentioned your brother Marcus dying of a heart attack at 36. It was too specific to be a coincidence." Daniel sat back in his wheelchair, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that painfully reminded Maya of Marcus. I don't even know what to say. 3 years? Maya nodded, untucking the ring from her dress and holding it out for him to see. "He gave me this during our 2nd year together. We lived in the same building at first, then practically together in his apartment for the last year?" Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "Marcus and I weren't close in the traditional sense, but we spoke at least monthly. Family holidays, occasional dinners. He helped fund my medical care after the accident." How could he have hidden a 3-year relationship? "The same way he hid having a brother from me," Maya said softly. "Marcus was compartmentalized. He kept his work life separate from his personal life. He rarely introduced me to colleagues, made excuses when I suggested meeting any family. I thought it was just his personality, but now it seems more calculated," Daniel finished, his expression troubled. "I knew my brother was private, but this level of deception—" The waiter approached their table, but Daniel waved him away with a polite gesture. "I'm sorry," Maya said, feeling the inadequacy of the words. "I should have told you as soon as I realized, but I was in shock, and then I needed time to process what it meant, that Marcus had lied to both of us so comprehensively." Daniel was silent for a long moment, his gaze focused somewhere over Maya's shoulder. When he finally looked at her again, his eyes were filled with a complex mixture of emotions: hurt, confusion, but also a dawning understanding. "The architect," he said suddenly. "What?" "About 1.5 years ago, Marcus mentioned he was seeing someone. He was vague, as usual, but he said she was an architect with actual talent, which from Marcus was high praise. That must have been you." Daniel shook his head. It was the only time he ever mentioned anyone. Then a few months later, when I asked about her, he changed the subject. I assumed it had ended, and not well. "It ended because I couldn't live with the walls he built," Maya said quietly. "I loved him, but I never felt like I truly knew him. Now I understand why." Daniel ran a hand over his face, looking suddenly tired. "I'm trying to imagine what he was thinking. Why keep us separate? What purpose did it serve?" Maya had been asking herself the same question since the previous night. "I don't know. Control, maybe? By keeping different parts of his life in separate boxes, he could present different versions of himself to different people." "That sounds like Marcus," Daniel admitted. "Always carefully managing perceptions, even with family." He paused, studying her face. "So, at the airport, that truly was a coincidence? You had no idea who I was?" "None," Maya confirmed. "I saw someone struggling with their tray and offered to help. I had no hidden agenda." Another long silence fell between them, broken only when the waiter returned, looking uncertain. Daniel ordered a whiskey, neat, and Maya asked for the same. She rarely drank whiskey, but tonight seemed to call for something stronger than her usual wine. When their drinks arrived, Daniel raised his glass slightly. "To bizarre coincidences," Maya clinked her glass against his, "and to painful truths." The whiskey burned pleasantly as it went down, warming her from the inside and loosening some of the tension that had built in her chest. "I don't know whether to laugh or be angry," Daniel said after a moment. "The universe has a strange sense of humor, bringing us together like this." "I've been thinking the same thing," Maya admitted. "Of all the people to help in an airport." A ghost of a smile touched Daniel's lips. "Perhaps Marcus is somewhere, watching this unfold and feeling very clever." The image was so unexpected that Maya found herself laughing, a release of the nervous energy that had been building since her realization. After a moment, Daniel joined her, his deep chuckle blending with her lighter laughter in a moment of shared absurdity. When their laughter subsided, Maya felt something shift between them, not an end to the awkwardness or confusion, but a transformation of it into something more manageable, more human. "I think we need food," Daniel said finally, signaling to the waiter who had been hovering at a respectful distance. "And perhaps you could tell me about your meeting, something normal to anchor this very abnormal evening." Maya appreciated the suggestion, the chance to step back from the emotional intensity of their discovery. As they ordered, sea bass for her, lamb for him, she found herself slipping into a description of her presentation, the investors' questions, and Vanessa Kapoor's encouraging words afterward. "It sounds promising," Daniel said, visibly making an effort to focus on her professional achievement rather than the bombshell that had exploded between them. "From what you've described, their level of engagement suggests serious interest." "I hope so," Maya replied. "This funding would allow me to launch with the right resources, not just scrape by." They maintained this relatively safe conversation through their appetizers, discussing the practicalities of starting a business, the challenges of the architectural industry, and Maya's vision for her firm. It was almost possible to pretend that nothing had changed, that they were simply two people enjoying a dinner after meeting by chance. But the unaddressed reality hovered between them, and when there was a natural lull in the conversation, Daniel set down his fork and looked directly at Maya. "Tell me about your relationship with my brother," he said quietly. "If you're comfortable doing so." Maya took a sip of water, gathering her thoughts. "We met at a charity event. I was there with my firm at the time. We had designed the venue and were being recognized. Marcus was a major donor." She smiled faintly at the memory. "He sought me out afterward, said he was impressed by my explanation of the design principles. We ended up talking for hours." "That sounds like Marcus," Daniel nodded. "When something caught his interest, he pursued it with intensity." "Yes," Maya agreed. "That was his way. We started dating almost immediately. It was consuming, exciting. He had this energy, this focus when he was present. And when he wasn't present, he was completely absent," Daniel finished. "I'm familiar with the pattern." Maya nodded, surprised by his understanding. "Exactly. When he was working, he disappeared entirely. 18-hour days, sometimes longer. He'd resurface exhausted, catch up on sleep, then want to pack as much living as possible into whatever time he had before the next work crisis." "Feast or famine," Daniel murmured. "He was like that even as a child, all in or all out." Their main courses arrived, and they paused their conversation as the waiter arranged their plates. When they were alone again, Maya continued, finding an unexpected relief in sharing her experience with someone who truly understood the complex person Marcus had been. "The good times were wonderful," she said. "He was brilliant, passionate, generous. But there was always this sense that I was only seeing a part of him, that there were rooms in his mind I wasn't allowed to enter." "Did you love him?" Daniel asked, the question direct but his tone gentle. Maya touched the silver ring at her throat. "Yes," she said simply. "Despite the walls, despite the absences. I loved who he was when he let his guard down, and I believed that version of him was the real one." "And now?" Daniel prompted. "Knowing what you know about his deception?" It was a question Maya had been asking herself since the previous night. "I'm angry," she admitted, "hurt, confused. But I still believe there was something real between us, even if it was built on a foundation of half-truths." She looked up at Daniel. "What about you? Has learning about this changed how you see him?" Daniel set down his fork, considering. "Marcus and I had a complicated relationship even before this revelation. I admired him and resented him in equal measure. He was brilliant but careless with people's feelings, generous financially but emotionally withholding." He sighed. Learning that he kept such a significant relationship secret, it confirms what I already knew about his compartmentalized approach to life, but it also makes me wonder what else I didn't know. They ate in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Maya found herself studying Daniel's face, noting again the subtle resemblances to Marcus, the shape of his jaw, certain expressions, but also the significant differences. Where Marcus had been all sharp edges and restless energy, Daniel had a steadiness, a thoughtful presence that felt like solid ground. "You two are very different," she observed. Daniel smiled faintly. "We were often described as two sides of the same coin, similar raw materials, completely different results." He cut a piece of lamb with precision. "Our mother used to say Marcus was like a Ferrari, flashy, high performance, but temperamental and requiring constant maintenance. I was more like a well-built Volvo, reliable, practical, built to last." He chuckled. "Not the most flattering comparison for a teenager, but I've come to appreciate it as I've gotten older." Maya smiled at the comparison. "I can see that, though I think you're selling yourself short. There's nothing boring about you, Daniel." Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between them, an acknowledgement of the connection that had formed at the airport, before they knew of their shared link to Marcus, a connection that persisted despite the complications. "I find myself in an impossible situation," Daniel said after a moment, his voice low. "I'm angry at my brother for his deception, sympathetic to what you must be feeling, and still—" He hesitated. "Still drawn to you in a way that feels inappropriate under the circumstances." Maya's heart beat a little faster at his honesty. "I'm experiencing the same contradiction," she admitted. "There's a part of me that feels I should walk away from this entire situation. It's too complicated, too laden with history. But there's another part that values the connection we formed, independent of Marcus." Daniel nodded slowly. "The question is, can that connection exist separately from our shared past? Or will Marcus always be between us, an invisible presence at the table?" It was a question Maya had been asking herself since her realization the night before. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I think I'd like to find out, if you would." A small smile touched Daniel's lips. "I would, though perhaps we should proceed with caution, given the circumstances." "Agreed," Maya said, returning his smile. "Cautious exploration seems appropriate." With that tentative understanding reached, some of the tension dissipated from the air. They finished their meals, the conversation turning to lighter topics. Books they had both read, places they had traveled, music they enjoyed. Maya found herself laughing at Daniel's dry humor, appreciating the way he listened intently when she spoke, as if truly valuing her thoughts. It wasn't until dessert, a shared chocolate soufflé that the chef had insisted they try, that the subject of Marcus arose again. "There's something I've been wondering," Maya said, setting down her spoon. "You mentioned unresolved issues with Marcus when he died. Would you mind telling me what happened between you?" Daniel was silent for a moment, considering her question. "Our last conversation was about a week before he died," he said finally. "I had called to tell him I was coming to San Francisco for business and wanted to have dinner. He seemed distracted, preoccupied. When I pressed him, he admitted he was under tremendous stress at work, some deal that was falling apart." Maya nodded, remembering the intense pressure Marcus had often been under. he could be consumed by work problems. Yes, but this seemed different, Daniel continued. He mentioned that he might have crossed some lines to salvage the deal. When I asked what he meant, he became defensive, said I wouldn't understand the complexities of his business. Daniel's expression darkened with the memory. I told him that whatever financial crisis he was facing wasn't worth compromising his integrity. We argued. He accused me of judging him from my moral high ground, said some hurtful things about my foundation work being a luxury afforded by family money that he had helped grow. Maya winced, recognizing the pattern. Marcus had sometimes lashed out when feeling cornered or criticized. That sounds like him when he felt threatened. The conversation ended badly, Daniel admitted. I told him he needed to reconsider his priorities before he lost everything that mattered. He hung up on me. He sighed heavily. A week later, he was dead. Heart attack at his desk, working late as usual. The pain in Daniel's voice was palpable. The regret of harsh words that could never be taken back, questions that could never be answered. Maya reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "That's a terrible weight to carry." Daniel turned his hand beneath hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that felt both comforting and intimate. "I've spent the last 6 months wondering what lines he crossed, what he was involved in. Part of the reason I came to San Francisco was to visit his apartment, see if there was anything that might explain what was happening in those final weeks." "His apartment?" Maya echoed, surprised. "I thought it would have been cleared out by now." Daniel shook his head. "I've kept it as it was. Paid the rent, maintained the utilities. I couldn't bring myself to dismantle his life until I understood more about his death. The doctors said it was a congenital heart condition, exacerbated by stress and an unhealthy lifestyle, but you wonder if there was more to it," Maya finished, understanding his need for closure. "Exactly," Daniel confirmed. "I'm going there tomorrow. It's the first time I've been back since right after the funeral." He hesitated, then added, Would you consider coming with me? I know it's a lot to ask, but you knew a side of Marcus that I didn't. You might notice things I would miss." Maya felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought of returning to Marcus's apartment, the place where they had spent so much time together, where they had both laughed and argued, loved and eventually grown apart. But she also recognized that this visit could provide answers that both she and Daniel needed. "I'll come," she said, squeezing his hand gently. "Maybe together we can piece together a more complete picture of who Marcus really was." Relief and gratitude washed over Daniel's face. "Thank you," he said simply. As they finished their dessert and prepared to leave the restaurant, Maya felt a curious mixture of emotions. Lingering sadness about Marcus's deception, anxiety about visiting his apartment, but also a growing warmth toward Daniel, a sense of connection that transcended their bizarre shared history. Outside, the San Francisco night was cool and clear, stars visible between the city's tall buildings. Daniel's driver was waiting with the same sleek black car from the previous evening. "Can we drop you at your hotel?" Daniel offered. Maya nodded, suddenly feeling the emotional exhaustion of the day, from the high of her successful presentation to the intensity of their dinner conversation. As they drove through the nighttime streets, a comfortable silence fell between them, their shared revelations creating a strange but undeniable intimacy. When they reached her hotel, Daniel took her hand before she could exit the car. "Despite everything, or perhaps because of it, I'm glad we met, Maya." She smiled, feeling the same contradictory certainty. "So am I." As she watched the car pull away, Maya wondered what tomorrow would bring, what secrets they might uncover in Marcus's apartment, and what new understanding might emerge between her and Daniel as they continued their cautious exploration of this unexpected connection. Maya woke to sunlight streaming through a gap in the hotel curtains. For a moment, she lay still, orienting herself to the day ahead. Her investor meeting was behind her, and she wouldn't hear their decision for several days. Today's agenda held only one significant event: visiting Marcus's apartment with Daniel. The thought sent a shiver through her. She hadn't been back to that apartment since the day she'd moved her remaining belongings out shortly after their breakup. The place had been so quintessentially Marcus, minimalist but expensive, with carefully curated art and furniture that spoke of wealth and taste without being ostentatious. It had never felt fully like home to her, perhaps because Marcus himself had kept parts of it off limits, both literally and figuratively. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Good morning. Still up for today? I can pick you up at 11 if that works." Maya typed back a quick confirmation, then rose to prepare for the emotionally complex day ahead. She chose comfortable jeans and a soft blue sweater, practical clothes that would help her feel grounded. Around her neck she still wore the silver ring on its chain, a talisman of sorts, a reminder of the past she was about to confront. At precisely 11, Daniel's black car pulled up to the hotel entrance. He was already in the back seat, looking out the window with an expression that suggested his thoughts were far away. When he saw her, his face brightened momentarily before settling into something more solemn, appropriate to their mission. "Good morning," he said, as she slid into the seat beside him. "Did you sleep well?" "Well enough," Maya replied. "You?" Daniel shrugged slightly. "In patches. I kept thinking about what we might find or not find." She understood his mixture of anticipation and dread. "Whatever we discover, we'll face it together." He nodded, his blue eyes warm with gratitude. "Thank you for doing this. I know it can't be easy for you either." The drive to Marcus's building took them through familiar neighborhoods. Maya found herself pointing out places she and Marcus had frequented. A farmer's market they'd visited on Sunday mornings, a small gallery where they'd attended openings, the park where they'd occasionally jogged together. "It's strange to think of Marcus doing those normal couple things," Daniel mused. "In my mind, he was always working or talking about work." "He had his moments of balance," Maya said, "usually after I practically dragged him away from his laptop." They fell into companionable silence as the car wound through the hilly streets, finally pulling up to a sleek high-rise in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. The doorman recognized Daniel immediately, greeting him with respectful sympathy. "Good to see you again, Mr. Whitman. Everything's ready for you upstairs." The elevator ride to the penthouse floor was swift and silent. Maya's heart pounded as Daniel inserted a key into the private elevator that served only Marcus's apartment. The doors slid open directly into the expansive living area. Maya stepped out first, hit immediately by the familiarity of the space. It looked exactly as she remembered. Clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows with spectacular views of the bay, minimalist furniture in muted tones of gray and blue. Yet there was something profoundly unsettling about the preserved quality of the space, as if Marcus might walk in at any moment, demanding to know why they were invading his sanctuary. "This is surreal," she murmured. Daniel maneuvered his wheelchair into the apartment, his expression unreadable. "I had a service maintain it monthly, basic cleaning, making sure nothing deteriorated, but otherwise it's as he left it." Maya moved further into the space, memories washing over her. She had spent countless hours in this room, reading on the sofa while Marcus worked, sharing quiet dinners at the glass dining table, watching the fog roll in over the bay on rare evenings when Marcus wasn't at the office. "He always did have impeccable taste," Daniel observed, running a hand over the back of a designer chair. "In everything except work-life balance," Maya said with a sad smile. They moved through the apartment slowly, each lost in their own memories and observations. The kitchen was pristine, barely used except by the private chef Marcus had occasionally hired. The guest bedroom that had gradually become filled with Maya's belongings during their relationship was now empty, except for a sleek desk and chair. Any trace of her presence had been removed after their breakup. "His bedroom is through here," Maya said, leading the way down a hallway lined with abstract art. The master bedroom was exactly as she remembered, dominated by a large platform bed with simple gray bedding and flanked by floor-to-ceiling windows offering the same spectacular view as the living room. A door led to a spacious bathroom with a rain shower and soaking tub, and another to a walk-in closet where Marcus's expensive suits still hung in perfect alignment. "It's like a museum exhibit," Daniel murmured. "The life and habitat of Marcus Whitman." Maya nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The apartment was perfectly curated, stylish and comfortable, yet somehow impersonal. There were no family photos, no mementos, nothing that revealed the inner life of its occupant. "His home office is next door," she said. "That's where he spent most of his time when he was here." Daniel followed her to a room that was noticeably different from the rest of the apartment. Where the other spaces were minimal and organized, Marcus's office showed signs of the intense focus and occasional chaos of his work life. Papers were still stacked on his desk, post-it notes adhered to a large monitor, books and folders filled the built-in shelves. "This feels more like him," Daniel observed, "the controlled chaos of a mind that's always racing." Maya moved to the desk, remembering how many times she had found Marcus here, hunched over spreadsheets or staring intently at financial models on his screen. She ran her fingers lightly over the surface, noting the faint coffee ring stains and indentations from his forceful writing style. "If there are answers, they'll be in here," she said. "This is where he lived, more than anywhere else in this apartment." Daniel nodded. "I've gone through some of his papers, but I was hoping you might notice things I wouldn't, given your different relationship with him." They began a methodical exploration of the office. Daniel focused on the computer and digital files, while Maya examined the physical documents, books, and notes scattered around the room. They worked mostly in silence, occasionally sharing observations or asking questions. After nearly an hour, Maya sat back on her heels, having been examining the contents of a lower shelf. "It's strange," she said. "For someone so intensely private, Marcus was surprisingly disorganized with his papers. There's no clear filing system here. Maybe that was intentional," Daniel suggested, looking up from the computer. "A kind of security through chaos. If no one can find anything, no one can discover his secrets." Maya considered this. "That's actually plausible, given what we now know about his compartmentalization." She stood and moved to a different section of shelving, pulling out what appeared to be financial journals and reports. As she flipped through one, a folded paper fell to the floor. Maya picked it up and unfolded it carefully. It was a handwritten note, the paper high quality and embossed with the letterhead of an exclusive hotel in Zurich. The message was brief but cryptic. "M. The Corvus situation requires immediate attention. Evidence suggests internal compromise. Secure the files and prepare contingency. J." "Daniel," Maya said, handing him the note. "Do you know what this might be referring to?" Daniel read it, his brow furrowing. "Corvus. I'm not familiar with that term in relation to any of Marcus's known projects, and I don't know who J might be." "The note seems urgent, almost alarming," Maya observed. "Internal compromise suggests something was going wrong within an organization." Daniel set the note aside and returned to the computer. "Let me search his files for any mention of Corvus." While Daniel worked, Maya continued her examination of the shelves. Behind a row of financial textbooks, she discovered a small safe built into the wall, its presence cleverly concealed. "Daniel, there's a hidden safe here," she called. He looked up, surprised. "I had no idea. Do you know the combination?" Maya shook her head. "Marcus never mentioned it to me. It must have been behind these books the whole time we were together." Daniel maneuvered his wheelchair closer to examine the safe. "It's a high-end model with a digital keypad. 6 digits from the look of it." "His birthday?" Maya suggested. "Worth a try," Daniel agreed, entering the 6 digits that represented Marcus's birth date. The safe remained locked. "What about your birthday, or the date you met?" Maya provided both, but neither worked. They tried several other significant dates: the day Marcus founded his investment firm, the date of their mother's death, even the address of their childhood home converted to numbers. "This is frustrating," Daniel said after their 10th failed attempt. "Whatever's in there, he really wanted to keep it secure." Maya stood back, thinking. Marcus always had a system for his passwords. He used meaningful dates or numbers, but usually with some kind of transformation, adding digits, reversing them, something that would be meaningful only to him. "The date he gave you that ring?" Daniel suggested, gesturing to the silver circle at her throat. Maya's fingers went to the ring automatically. "Maybe." She closed her eyes, remembering the night Marcus had given it to her, a rare romantic gesture during a weekend trip to Napa. She entered the date, but again the safe remained locked. "Wait," she said suddenly. "What about the date your accident?" Daniel looked surprised. "You think he'd use that? You said he helped pay for your medical care, that he was affected by seeing you vulnerable. It might have been significant to him, even if he didn't show it outwardly." Daniel provided the date, and Maya entered it into the keypad. Nothing happened. "Try reversing it," Daniel suggested, "or adding his birth year to it." Maya tried both variations without success. Then, on an intuition, she entered the date of Daniel's accident followed by her own birth year, the kind of combination that would be meaningful to Marcus but virtually impossible for anyone else to guess. The safe beeped softly, and they heard the click of the lock disengaging. "You did it," Daniel said, his voice hushed with surprise and something like awe. Maya carefully opened the safe. Inside were several items: a thick manila envelope, a small velvet box, a USB drive, and a leather-bound journal that looked expensive but well used. "I've never seen that journal before," Maya said, reaching for it. "Nor have I," Daniel replied. "Marcus was never one for journaling, at least not that I knew of." Maya opened it carefully. The pages were filled with Marcus's distinctive handwriting, neat but intense, the pen pressed firmly into the paper. She began to read aloud. "September 15th. Discovered discrepancies in the Meridian accounts. Initial analysis suggests systematic diversion of funds through a series of shell companies. The pattern is sophisticated, professional. This goes beyond simple embezzlement. Need more evidence before approaching the board." She looked up at Daniel, whose expression had grown grave. "What was Meridian?" she asked. "One of his largest client accounts," Daniel replied. "A multinational corporation with interests in everything from pharmaceuticals to tech. This sounds like he was uncovering some kind of financial fraud." Maya turned to a later entry and continued reading. "October 3rd. Corvus is deeper than I initially thought. The shell companies trace back to individuals connected with government contracts. Jay confirms my suspicions but warns of serious repercussions if I proceed. The amount of money involved is staggering. Ethical considerations versus self-preservation." Daniel's face had paled. This suggests he was uncovering something major, something potentially dangerous. Maya flipped to what appeared to be the final entry, dated just 3 days before Marcus's death. October 25th. Decision made. Meeting with regulatory authorities tomorrow. Jay thinks I'm being naive? Maybe I am. Can't live with myself if I facilitate this any longer. Called D, but conversation went poorly. Typical. No one understands the position I'm in. Prepared digital evidence as insurance. If anything happens, key is where it all began. Maya and Daniel stared at each other, the implications of Marcus's final journal entry hanging heavy in the air between them. "If anything happens," Daniel repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. He was worried about his safety. "And he died the next day," Maya said, a cold feeling spreading through her chest. "Before he could meet with the authorities." Daniel ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair, his expression troubled. The medical examiner ruled it a natural death. Congenital heart condition, exacerbated by stress and poor lifestyle choices. But the timing… Maya couldn't finish the thought. It was too enormous, too terrible to contemplate. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Daniel said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Let's see what else is here." Maya set the journal aside and reached for the USB drive. "We should check what's on this." Daniel nodded and turned back to Marcus's computer, inserting the drive into an available port. A password prompt appeared on the screen. "Another password," he said with a sigh. "Any ideas?" Maya thought for a moment. His journal mentioned a key where it all began. That could be a clue. What began, though? Daniel wondered. His career? Our childhood home? The Corvus situation? "Or us," Maya said quietly. "Where Marcus and I began." She leaned over Daniel's shoulder and typed in the address of the gallery where she and Marcus had first met. The password was rejected. "Maybe it's more literal," Daniel suggested. "The first project he worked on at his firm, or his first major investment." They tried several possibilities without success. Frustration mounting, Maya paced the office while Daniel continued his attempts with the computer. "Wait," she said suddenly, stopping in her tracks. "The ring!" "What about it?" "Marcus gave me this ring at Calistoga Springs Resort. He said it was where things began to feel real between us." She unclasped the chain and held the silver ring in her palm, examining it closely. For the first time, she noticed there was something engraved on the inside, tiny numbers that she had never paid attention to before. "There's an engraving," she said, bringing the ring closer to read it. "It looks like 749218. Daniel quickly entered the numbers. The password prompt disappeared, replaced by a directory of files. "It worked," he said, sounding surprised and impressed. "He really did care about you in his way." Maya felt a complicated surge of emotions. Vindication that their relationship had meant something to Marcus after all, sadness that he had kept so much from her, and a strange new guilt about the growing connection she felt with Daniel. They bent over the computer together, examining the contents of the USB drive. It contained dozens of financial spreadsheets, email correspondence, and what appeared to be bank records, all meticulously organized into folders labeled with dates and cryptic abbreviations. "This is evidence," Daniel said, scanning through the files. "Documentation of whatever fraud he discovered." One folder was simply labeled Corvus. Inside were photographs of what appeared to be confidential documents, bank statements showing transfers of massive sums, and a spreadsheet tracking what seemed to be payments to various individuals identified only by initials. "These are enormous amounts," Maya observed, pointing to figures in the millions of dollars. "What exactly was Corvus?" "From context, it seems to be a code name for some kind of operation," Daniel said, opening another document. "Here's a reference to Phase 3 of Corvus implementation and security protocols for asset transfer." Asset transfer could mean anything from money to information to physical goods, Maya noted. But whatever it was, it involved government contracts, according to Marcus's journal. They continued examining the files, finding references to offshore accounts, shell companies with addresses in the Cayman Islands and Liechtenstein, and encrypted communication logs. It was clear that Marcus had been thorough in his investigation, gathering substantial evidence of financial wrongdoing. "He was building a case," Daniel said, sitting back in his wheelchair, "a comprehensive, damning case against whoever was behind this." "And he was killed for it," Maya said softly, voicing what they were both thinking. Daniel didn't contradict her this time. "It's looking that way." They sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the gravity of their discovery. Marcus hadn't just been a secretive, compartmentalized workaholic. He had been a man uncovering a massive financial conspiracy, one that may have cost him his life. "We should look at the other items from the safe," Daniel said finally, reaching for the manila envelope. Inside were more documents, hard copies of some of the files they had seen on the USB drive, along with what appeared to be personal records. Marcus's will, insurance policies, and property deeds. There was also a letter addressed to Daniel, sealed in a separate envelope. Daniel stared at his name written in Marcus's distinctive handwriting, visibly steeling himself before opening it. Maya turned away, giving him a moment of privacy as he read his brother's final words to him. "Maya," he said after a long silence, his voice strained. "You should read this too." She took the letter from his outstretched hand, the paper trembling slightly between them. "Daniel, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I hope it was just a heart attack like Dad's and not the alternative, but I'm not taking chances. I've discovered something dangerous at work. A massive fraud scheme involving Meridian Corp and government contracts. The details are on the USB drive, along with evidence I've collected over the past 3 months. It goes high up, D. Cabinet level high. I'm meeting with federal investigators tomorrow, but I've made enemies of powerful people. I'm sorry about our last conversation. You were right, as usual. I've compromised too much, looked the other way too often. I'm trying to make it right now, but it may be too late. There are things you don't know about me. I've kept parts of my life separate. You from my work from my personal life. I've been seeing someone, Maya Reynolds. She's an architect, brilliant and kind. I've never told her about you, or you about her. It's the way I've always operated. Compartments, clean lines, no overlap. I know it's not healthy, but it's too late to change now. If something happens to me, find Maya. Make sure she's safe. I've given her a ring with numbers engraved inside, the passcode to the encrypted files. She doesn't know what they mean, and I've never told her about any of this, but those numbers could make her a target if the wrong people figure it out. The velvet box in the safe is for her. I was going to propose next month, try to finally bring my life into some kind of unified whole. Too little, too late, I suppose. Take care of yourself, big brother. You were always the better man. Marcus Maya lowered the letter, tears blurring her vision. Marcus had been planning to propose. After years of keeping her in a separate compartment of his life, he had finally been ready to fully commit, to merge his fragmented existence into something whole, only to die before he could take that step. And he had feared for her safety. He thought the information he had given her, the ring with its encoded numbers, might make her a target. He was going to propose, she said, her voice catching, after all that time keeping me at arm's length. Daniel reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. He loved you in his way, and he was trying to change to be better. Maya nodded, wiping away tears. It doesn't erase the lies, but it helps to know he recognized what he was doing. Daniel's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, a comforting gesture that anchored her in the moment. "Should we open the box?" he asked softly. Maya nodded, releasing his hand to reach for the small velvet container. Inside was an engagement ring, a striking emerald surrounded by small diamonds set in platinum. It was beautiful, but not ostentatious, exactly the kind of ring Maya would have chosen for herself. "He knew your taste," Daniel observed. "Yes," Maya agreed, closing the box without taking the ring out. It was too much, the might-have-beens, the questions that would never be answered, the future that had been stolen from them, whatever its complications might have been. She returned to the letter, rereading the section about her safety. "He thought I might be in danger because of the numbers on this ring. But it's been 6 months since his death, and nothing has happened." "Maybe no one has made the connection yet," Daniel suggested. "Or maybe the threat has passed. The question is, what do we do with all of this now?" It was a good question. They had uncovered evidence of a major financial fraud involving government contracts, potentially orchestrated by people with enough power and influence to have Marcus killed and make it look like natural causes. "We need to complete what Marcus started," Maya said firmly. "Take this information to the authorities." Daniel looked troubled. If what Marcus wrote is true, and this goes as high as cabinet level, We need to be extremely careful about who we trust. The wrong move could put us both in danger." "We can't just ignore this," Maya argued. "Marcus died trying to expose this corruption. We owe it to him to finish what he started." "I agree," Daniel said, "but we need to be strategic. If Marcus was murdered for what he knew, the same people wouldn't hesitate to silence us too." The gravity of the situation settled over them. This was no longer just about understanding Marcus's secrets. It was about potential corruption at the highest levels of government, corporate fraud on a massive scale, and a possible murder disguised as a natural death. "We should make copies of everything," Maya suggested. "The journal, the USB contents, the documents, insurance." Daniel nodded. "Good idea. And we need to figure out exactly what Corvus is. That seems to be at the heart of whatever Marcus uncovered." As they began organizing the materials, Maya's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it absently, then froze. "Daniel," she said, her voice tight with alarm, "look at this." She turned the phone so he could see the message on the screen. "The ring doesn't belong to you. Return it and the files, or suffer the same fate as Marcus. We're watching." The message was from an unknown number. As they stared at it in shock, a follow-up text arrived with a photo, a picture taken that morning showing Maya entering Daniel's car outside her hotel. "They know we're here," Daniel said, his face pale. "They know we've found the evidence." Maya's hand went instinctively to the silver ring at her throat. "How? We've only just discovered what it means ourselves." "Marcus's apartment might be under surveillance," Daniel said, quickly gathering the materials from the safe. "We need to leave, now." As if to emphasize his point, they heard the distinctive sound of the private elevator beginning its ascent to the penthouse level. "Is anyone else supposed to have access?" Maya asked, already knowing the answer. Daniel shook his head, his expression grim. "No one. We need to go. Is there another way out of here?" "Service elevator," Maya said, remembering how they had once used it when the main elevator was being repaired. "Through the kitchen? Hidden door that looks like a pantry." They moved quickly, Daniel transferring the journal, USB drive, and documents into a leather messenger bag hanging from his wheelchair while Maya led the way to the kitchen. The private elevator continued its ominous ascent as they located the disguised door to the service elevator. "Hurry!" Daniel urged as Maya pulled the door open and jabbed the call button. The service elevator, slower and more utilitarian than the private one, seemed to take an eternity to respond. Behind them, they heard the main elevator reaching the penthouse level, its doors sliding open with a soft chime. Footsteps entered the apartment, multiple sets, moving with purpose. The service elevator arrived at last, its doors opening with a mechanical groan that seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence. Maya helped Daniel maneuver his wheelchair inside, then hit the button for the garage level. As the doors began to close, they heard voices approaching the kitchen, and Maya caught a glimpse of two men in dark suits rounding the corner. "There!" one of them shouted, breaking into a run, but the doors closed just in time, and the elevator began its descent, carrying Maya and Daniel away from their pursuers, and into a danger neither of them had anticipated when they'd set out that morning to uncover Marcus's secrets. The service elevator descended with agonizing slowness. Maya's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the floor numbers tick down one by one. Daniel gripped the handles of his wheelchair, knuckles white, his expression tense but focused. "They'll be calling the main elevator now," he said quietly. "We have maybe a minute's head start, at best." "Your driver?" Maya asked. Daniel shook his head. "I told him to return in 3 hours. We're on our own." The elevator finally reached the garage level, its doors opening with the same mechanical groan that now seemed like a warning bell announcing their location. Maya peered out cautiously before helping Daniel navigate his wheelchair over the slight lip between the elevator and the concrete floor. "This way," she said, remembering the garage layout from her time with Marcus. There's a service exit that leads to the alley behind the building." They moved as quickly as they could, Daniel propelling his wheelchair with powerful strokes, while Maya walked rapidly beside him. The garage was dimly lit and smelled of concrete and exhaust, their footsteps and the soft whir of Daniel's wheels echoing in the cavernous space. "Do you think those men were actually following us? Or were they just checking the apartment?" Maya asked, her voice hushed. "The timing is too coincidental," Daniel replied grimly. "That text message, then their arrival minutes later, they were responding to our discovery." They reached the service exit, a heavy metal door with a push bar. Maya pressed it, relieved when it opened without an alarm. They emerged into a narrow alley lined with dumpsters and delivery entrances for the surrounding buildings. "Which way?" Daniel asked, scanning both directions. Maya pointed left. "That leads to a side street. We can get a rideshare there without being seen from the main entrance." They had traveled perhaps 20 yards when they heard the service door bang open behind them. Maya glanced back to see one of the men from the apartment scanning the alley. His eyes locked on them. "Run!" Daniel urged, increasing his pace. Maya broke into a jog beside him, but the alley's uneven pavement made it difficult for Daniel to maintain speed without risking tipping his wheelchair. The man behind them was closing the distance rapidly. Ahead, Maya spotted a delivery truck backing into a loading dock, momentarily blocking the alley. "This way," she said, veering toward a narrow passage between two buildings. It was barely wide enough for Daniel's wheelchair, but their pursuer would have to squeeze through sideways, buying them precious seconds. They emerged onto a bustling street, immediately blending into the flow of pedestrians. Daniel pulled out his phone. "I'm calling for a car," he said, fingers moving rapidly over the screen. "It'll be here in 2 minutes. Corner of Powell and Geary." They made their way to the pickup location, constantly checking behind them. The car, another sleek black sedan, arrived precisely when promised, and they quickly got in, Daniel transferring smoothly from his wheelchair while the driver efficiently folded and stowed it in the trunk. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked. Daniel hesitated, clearly reluctant to give his hotel name in case they were being followed. "Four Seasons," he said finally, "but drop us at the shopping entrance, not the main lobby." As the car pulled away from the curb, Maya craned her neck to look out the rear window. She caught a glimpse of one of the men from the apartment emerging onto the street, scanning the crowd with barely contained frustration. "They've lost us for now," she said, turning back to Daniel. He nodded, though his expression remained tense. "Temporarily. But they know who we are, and they undoubtedly have resources." Maya's fingers went instinctively to the ring hanging around her neck. "We need to understand what we're dealing with. What exactly is Corvus, and who's behind it? First, we need somewhere safe to examine everything we took from the apartment," Daniel said. "My hotel room isn't secure enough. They might already know where I'm staying." "Mine too," Maya agreed. "And we can't go to the police until we know who we can trust. Marcus's letter said this went to cabinet level." Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I have a friend with a house in Sausalito. He's in Europe for the month and gave me a key in case I wanted to use it during my visit. It's private, secure, and not connected to me in any obvious way." "That could work," Maya said, relief washing over her. "How soon can we get there?" "It's about a 30-minute drive, traffic permitting." Maya nodded, then suddenly remembered something important. "My investor meeting. I'm supposed to get their decision in the next few days. I can't just disappear without contact." "Can you check in remotely?" "Yes, they have my cell number and email. But if whoever is after us is as powerful as Marcus suggested, they might be able to track those." Daniel considered this. "We'll get burner phones once we're across the bridge. You can send a brief email from your regular phone saying you've had a family emergency and will be checking messages periodically." The car wound through San Francisco's streets, eventually merging onto the Golden Gate Bridge. Maya watched the iconic red towers pass overhead, the familiar beauty of the crossing now underscored by a sense of escape and urgency. On the Marin County side, they stopped briefly at a shopping center where Daniel purchased 2 prepaid phones, paying cash. Back in the car, Maya composed a careful email to the investment team, citing a sudden family emergency that required her attention, but assuring them she was still fully committed to the partnership. The house in Sausalito turned out to be a modern structure built into a hillside, with expansive windows overlooking the bay and San Francisco skyline. Despite the circumstances, Maya couldn't help but admire the architecture, clean lines and thoughtful integration with the natural surroundings. "Your friend has excellent taste," she observed as Daniel unlocked the front door. "He's a tech entrepreneur with a passion for sustainable design," Daniel explained. "You two would probably get along." Inside, the house was immaculately maintained, with minimalist furnishings and state-of-the-art amenities. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the spectacular view, though Maya immediately moved to close the automatic blinds, conscious of their visibility. "There's a home office downstairs," Daniel said, leading the way to an elevator concealed behind what appeared to be a closet door. "We can work there with more privacy." The office was a comfortable space with a large desk, powerful computer setup, and a seating area with a sofa and coffee table. Maya spread out the materials they had taken from Marcus's apartment, the journal, documents, the USB drive, and the letter, while Daniel booted up the computer. "Let's start by copying everything onto this system," Daniel suggested. "Then we can search more systematically for information about Corvus." While the files transferred, Maya paged through Marcus's journal again, looking for additional clues. "He first mentions Corvus in early September," she noted. "The entries become increasingly concerned as he uncovers more about it." "September would have been about 2 months before his death," Daniel observed, "and around 7 months after your breakup?" Maya nodded, a pang of sadness hitting her unexpectedly. "Yes, we split up last January. I'm trying to create a timeline," Daniel explained, pulling up a blank document. "When did you first notice changes in Marcus's behavior? Anything unusual?" Maya thought back, trying to separate her personal memories of their relationship's deterioration from potentially relevant details. "The last few months we were together, he became even more withdrawn than usual, more secretive about his work. I assumed it was just the same workaholic tendency that had always been an issue between us, but looking back, he might have been noticing problems even then." Daniel finished her thought. "The early stages of whatever became Corvus." They worked methodically for the next hour, Daniel organizing the digital files while Maya continued reviewing the physical documents. The emergence of a clearer picture was both enlightening and disturbing. "From what I can piece together," Daniel said finally, leaning back in his chair, "Corvus appears to be a systematic embezzlement scheme disguised as legitimate government contracts. Meridian Corporation was the primary vehicle, but there were at least 6 other companies involved, all funneling money through a complex web of offshore accounts. And based on the amounts," Maya added, "we're talking billions, not millions. This is massive, Daniel." "The money trail leads back to a handful of individuals identified only by initials in Marcus's files," Daniel continued, "but there are references to top government officials, including someone he refers to as the secretary." "Cabinet level, just like he said in his letter," Maya murmured. "No wonder he was killed." Daniel's expression darkened. "We still don't have absolute proof it wasn't a natural death. The timing is too perfect," Maya insisted. "He was going to blow the whistle the next day. These people had billions of reasons to want him silenced." Daniel didn't argue further. Instead, he turned his attention to a particular file on the screen. "This is interesting." Marcus had started compiling a dossier on someone named James Harrington. The file is incomplete, but it suggests Harrington might be Jay, the person who warned Marcus about the potential consequences of exposing Corvus. Maya moved to look over his shoulder at the screen. The file contained background information on Harrington, a former investment banker turned government consultant with connections to both Meridian Corporation and several federal agencies. Could he be an ally? She wondered. He seems to have been warning Marcus, not threatening him. Possibly, Daniel conceded. Or he could have been playing both sides. These notes suggest Marcus wasn't entirely sure he could trust him. A notification popped up on the computer screen. The file transfer was complete. Daniel ejected the USB drive and handed it to Maya. "We should keep this separate from the copies as backup," he said, along with the original journal and documents. Maya took the drive, tucking it securely into her pocket. As she did so, her fingers brushed against the chain around her neck, reminding her of the threatening text message. "They want the ring," she said, lifting the silver circle from beneath her sweater. "But why? The passcode is already used. What else could it contain?" Daniel frowned thoughtfully. "May I see it?" Maya unclasped the chain and handed him the ring. Daniel examined it carefully, turning it in his fingers and studying the engraved numbers. "These don't look like a manufacturing mark or typical engraving," he observed. "They're too precise, too intentional." He looked up suddenly. "What if they're not just a passcode? What if they're coordinates?" Maya's eyes widened. "Geographic coordinates?" "It's worth checking." Daniel quickly entered the numbers into a mapping application, adjusting them slightly to fit the format of latitude and longitude. A location appeared on the screen, a point in the forests north of San Francisco, about 2 hours' drive from their current location. "It's the middle of nowhere," Maya said, studying the map. "Not quite," Daniel replied, zooming in. "There appears to be a structure of some kind there, a cabin maybe." "Marcus never mentioned having a cabin," Maya said, frowning. "No, he wouldn't have," Daniel agreed. "It fits his pattern. Another compartment, another secret." They looked at each other, the same question in both their minds. What might be waiting for them at those coordinates? "We should go there," Maya said decisively. "Tomorrow morning. Whatever Marcus hid there might be the key to understanding Corvus and proving he was murdered." Daniel nodded slowly. "I agree, but we need to be prepared. Whoever sent that text message might make the same connection we just did. So we need to move quickly," Maya said, "before they realize we've figured it out." As if on cue, her burner phone rang, an impossible occurrence, since no one had the number yet. They stared at the device in shock as it continued to ring, the screen showing only "unknown caller." With a deep breath, Maya answered and put it on speaker. "Hello?" "Ms. Reynolds," said a male voice, smooth and cultured. "And Mr. Whitman too, I presume. You've put yourselves in considerable danger by taking Marcus's files." Daniel leaned forward. "Who is this?" "A friend of your brother's. My name is James Harrington, though he would have referred to me simply as Jay. We need to meet, urgently. Lives depend on it, including your own." Maya and Daniel exchanged alarmed glances. How had Harrington obtained their burner phone number so quickly? "How did you find this number?" Daniel demanded, his voice tense. "The same way the others will given time," Harrington replied calmly. "I have resources, but so do they. We need to meet in person. It's not safe to talk on any electronic device." "Why should we trust you?" Maya asked. "For all we know, you could be working with whoever is after Marcus's files." A short sigh came through the speaker. "Marcus wondered the same thing right until the end. I don't blame you for your suspicion, but I was trying to help him, just as I'm trying to help you now. Check the journal, October 18th entry. He mentions meeting me at the Redwood Cafe in Mill Valley." Daniel flipped quickly through Marcus's journal to the date in question. The entry was brief, but confirmed what Harrington had said. "Met Jay at Redwood. He thinks I'm walking into a trap. Maybe I am, but there's no turning back now." "All right," Daniel said cautiously. "Assuming you are who you say you are, what do you propose?" "Meet me at the Presidio, the old military cemetery, in 1 hour. Come alone. No drivers, no phones. Take precautions to ensure you're not followed." "The Presidio is too open," Daniel countered. "We'd be exposed." That's precisely the point. It's public enough to discourage direct action, but open enough that I can spot surveillance. 1 hour. I'll be near the east entrance. The line went dead. Maya looked at Daniel. What do you think? He set the phone down, his expression troubled. He found our number too easily for comfort, but if he's genuinely Marcus's contact, he might have crucial information. And if he's working with the people who killed Marcus? Then we're walking into a trap, Daniel said grimly. But we need more information, and right now, he's our only lead besides the coordinates. Maya paced the office, weighing their options. What if we split up? You meet with Harrington, and I go check the coordinates. Daniel shook his head firmly. Too dangerous. If Harrington is setting a trap, I'd be walking into it alone, and you'd be isolated in the middle of nowhere if they've already discovered the cabin. Then we both meet Harrington first, and go to the coordinates afterward? That's the safer option, Daniel agreed. But we need to be careful. No phones, like he said, they can be tracked. And we take a different vehicle, not the car service. There's a garage below, Maya remembered. Does your friend keep a car here? Yes, a Range Rover. He told me I could use it if needed. They spent the next 20 minutes preparing, gathering the essential documents while leaving copies secured in the house's safe. Daniel found the keys to the Range Rover and a baseball cap to partially obscure his recognizable silver hair. Maya tied her hair back and borrowed sunglasses from a drawer. Not much of a disguise, she acknowledged ruefully, but better than nothing. They took a circuitous route to the Presidio, doubling back several times to ensure they weren't followed. The military cemetery was peaceful in the late afternoon light, ancient trees casting long shadows across rows of white headstones. Daniel maneuvered his wheelchair expertly over the cemetery's paved paths, while Maya walked beside him, both scanning their surroundings for signs of danger or surveillance. Near the east entrance, they spotted a solitary figure sitting on a bench, a man in his 60s with silver-gray hair and a trimmed beard wearing an expensive but understated suit. As they approached, he stood, his posture military straight despite his age. Mr. Whitman, Ms. Reynolds, he greeted them, his voice matching the one they'd heard on the phone. James Harrington. Thank you for coming. We don't have much choice, Daniel replied. You seem to have all the advantages here. Harrington gestured for them to join him on a nearby bench situated to give a clear view of the surroundings. I understand your caution. In your position, I'd feel the same. What's your connection to Marcus? Maya asked directly. And to Corvus? Harrington's expression grew somber. I met Marcus 3 years ago through mutual connections in the financial sector. I've spent the last decade as a consultant bridging private investment and government contracts. He paused. About 7 months ago, Marcus approached me with concerns about irregularities he'd discovered in the Meridian accounts. What began as apparent accounting discrepancies led us both down a rabbit hole. The Corvus scheme, Daniel prompted. Harrington nodded. Corvus is the code name for an operation that diverts government contract funds, billions of dollars, through a network of shell companies and offshore accounts. The money ultimately benefits a small group of extremely powerful individuals, including cabinet officials and corporate executives. Marcus uncovered it accidentally while reviewing Meridian's financials. And you were helping him investigate? Maya asked skeptically. Not initially, Harrington admitted. At first I warned him to drop it. These people, they don't hesitate to eliminate threats. But Marcus was persistent. Eventually, I agreed to help him gather evidence, using my connections to access information he couldn't reach alone. Did you know he was planning to go to the authorities? Daniel asked. I advised against it, Harrington said, his eyes darkening with regret. I told him to secure ironclad evidence first, to protect himself. He didn't listen. He looked between them. When I heard about his heart attack, I knew immediately what had happened. Why didn't you go to the authorities yourself? Maya challenged. With what? My word against theirs? I needed Marcus's evidence, but by the time I discreetly inquired, his apartment was already under surveillance. I've been waiting, watching for an opportunity. He focused on Maya. Then you appeared at the airport with Daniel and things accelerated. Daniel frowned. You were watching us at the airport? Not me personally, but yes, I have sources. When I realized who Maya was and that you two had connected, I knew it was only a matter of time before you discovered Marcus's files. Harrington leaned forward. The people behind Corvus realized it too. They've been watching both of you since you arrived in San Francisco. Maya felt a chill run through her. The text message about the ring, a warning shot, Harrington confirmed. They don't yet know exactly what Marcus documented or where all the evidence is, but they know enough to be concerned. They're watching his apartment, tracking your movements. What about the coordinates? Daniel asked cautiously, not specifying what he meant. Harrington's eyes narrowed slightly. So you found them. Good. The cabin is secure for now. It's registered under a shell company Marcus created that isn't connected to his public identity. But they'll make the connection eventually. What's at the cabin? Maya asked. Insurance, Harrington replied. Marcus didn't trust digital storage for his most damning evidence. There's a safe with original documents, recordings of conversations, banking records, material that would bring down everyone involved in Corvus if it reached the right authorities. And who are the right authorities? Daniel pressed. Marcus's letter mentioned cabinet-level involvement. Harrington nodded grimly. The corruption extends to the highest levels of several agencies, but not all. There's a special prosecutor, Catherine West, investigating government contract fraud. She's incorruptible and has the jurisdiction to act on evidence like this. Marcus was planning to meet with her the day after he died. So we take the evidence to this prosecutor, Maya said. It's not that simple, Harrington cautioned. West is closely watched by the very people involved in Corvus. Approaching her directly would alert them. You need the complete evidence package from the cabin first, then a secure channel to her office. Which you can provide? Daniel's tone was skeptical. Yes. Harrington reached slowly into his jacket, telegraphing his movements to avoid alarming them, and withdrew a small card with only a phone number written on it. This is a secure line that connects to West's most trusted investigator, but do not call until you have everything from the cabin. You'll only get one chance. Daniel took the card, studying it before tucking it away. Why are you helping us? Harrington was silent for a moment, his gaze drifting to the rows of military headstones surrounding them. I've served this country in various capacities for over 40 years. What Corvus represents, the corruption, the betrayal of public trust, it's a cancer that will destroy everything I've spent my life protecting. He looked back at them, his eyes hard, and I owed Marcus. I warned him of the danger, but I didn't do enough to protect him. A jogger passed nearby, causing all three to tense momentarily. When the runner continued past without showing interest in their conversation, Harrington stood. You should go to the cabin tonight, not tomorrow, he advised. They're not far behind you. I can create a diversion, leak information suggesting you've fled to Seattle, but it won't hold them for long. Why should we trust you? Maya asked, the fundamental question that had been hanging in the air throughout their conversation. Harrington smiled thinly. You shouldn't, completely. Trust the evidence your own eyes show you. Trust Marcus's journal, and verify everything I've told you when you reach the cabin. He checked his watch. We've been here too long already. Wait 5 minutes after I leave, then go directly to the coordinates. Don't stop anywhere. Don't use credit cards. Don't call anyone. With a final nod, Harrington walked away, his posture still military straight, disappearing among the trees lining the cemetery's edge. What do you think? Maya asked when he was gone. I think he's telling the truth about Corvus and the danger, Daniel replied thoughtfully. Whether he's being completely forthcoming about his own role, that's harder to say. Do we go to the cabin? Daniel nodded. It's our best lead, and if he's right about the evidence there, it could be the key to exposing everything and proving Marcus was murdered. They returned to the Range Rover in silence, each processing Harrington's information and warnings. As Daniel started the engine, Maya looked over at him. "Are you scared?" she asked quietly. His eyes met hers, candid and vulnerable in a way that made her heart tighten. "Yes," he admitted, "but also determined. Marcus deserves justice, and so do we." The drive north took them through Marin County's winding roads, the landscape gradually shifting from suburban developments to thickly forested hills. Neither spoke much, the weight of their mission and the potential danger ahead creating a thoughtful silence between them. As the last light of day faded, they turned onto progressively smaller roads, following the navigation system's directions toward the coordinates from Maya's ring. The final turn led them onto a rough dirt track that wound upward through dense redwoods. "It's remote," Daniel observed as the Range Rover handled the rugged terrain with ease. "Good for privacy, less good for quick escapes." After about a mile, the trees opened to reveal a small clearing where a cabin stood, its wooden exterior weathered to a silver gray that blended with the surrounding forest. Solar panels gleamed on the roof, catching the last rays of sunlight. "This is it," Maya said, checking the coordinates against the car's GPS. "Marcus's secret hideaway." They approached cautiously, looking for signs of recent visitors or disturbance. The cabin appeared untouched, a thin layer of pine needles undisturbed on the porch steps. "Wait here," Maya said, getting out of the car. "Let me check inside first." "Be careful," Daniel cautioned, handing her a flashlight from the glove compartment. Maya climbed the steps and tried the door, locked as expected. She located a hidden key box under a loose board where Marcus had always kept spare keys to his properties, something he'd mentioned casually years ago. The combination was the same one he'd used for his apartment's key safe, his mother's birthday. The door opened with a creak of disuse. Maya swept the flashlight beam across the interior, a simple open-plan space with basic furnishings, a kitchenette, and a small wood stove. A layer of dust suggested no one had been there for months. "It's clear," she called to Daniel, turning on the cabin's lights, which flickered to life after a moment, drawing power from what must be a battery system charged by the solar panels. Daniel joined her, his wheelchair navigating the cabin's entrance with some difficulty due to a small step, which Maya helped him overcome. "Not exactly built with accessibility in mind," he commented wryly. "I don't think Marcus ever intended to bring guests here," Maya replied, looking around with growing curiosity. "This was his private sanctuary." The cabin's interior was spartanly furnished but comfortable, with none of the expensive designer pieces that had filled his apartment. A bookshelf held paperbacks, thrillers and historical novels that Maya had never seen Marcus read during their relationship. A fishing rod stood in one corner and hiking boots by the door. It was as if the cabin housed an entirely different version of Marcus, one neither of them had fully known. Where would he hide a safe? Daniel wondered, scanning the walls. "Knowing Marcus, somewhere clever but accessible," Maya said, running her hand along the stone fireplace's mantel. "He was paranoid about security, but also practical." They searched methodically, checking for loose floorboards, hollow walls, hidden panels. Finally, behind a landscape painting of the surrounding forest, they found it, a digital safe similar to the one in Marcus's apartment. "Another 6-digit code," Daniel observed. "Any ideas?" Maya studied the safe thoughtfully. "If the ring coordinates led here, maybe the safe combination is something related to the ring itself?" She turned the silver circle in her fingers, then suddenly realized, "The date he gave me this ring, but not as a date format, the actual day of the year." She calculated quickly and entered the digits, 152189. The safe beeped and the lock disengaged. Inside was exactly what Harrington had described, a waterproof case containing original documents, a digital voice recorder, and several USB drives labeled meticulously in Marcus's handwriting. Also inside was a sealed envelope with both their names written on it, Daniel and Maya, in Marcus's distinctive script. Daniel took the envelope with trembling fingers. He knew, he said softly. Somehow, he knew we'd be here together. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "Open it," she whispered. Daniel carefully opened the envelope, unfolding the letter inside. He held it so they both could read it, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. Daniel and Maya, if you're reading this together, then several nearly impossible things have happened. You've found each other. You've discovered the truth about who I was, or rather the compartmentalized lives I lived, and you've pieced together enough about Corvus to understand why it matters. First, I need to apologize to you both. Daniel, my brother, my protector, the best man I've ever known. I'm sorry for the walls I built between us, for the distance I maintained even after your accident when you needed me most. My compartmentalization wasn't just a personality quirk, it became a prison of my own making, one that prevented me from being the brother you deserved. Maya, you saw parts of me no one else did, not even Daniel. You made me want to be whole, to tear down the walls between my separate lives. I was too late in realizing what that meant, what you meant to me. By the time I understood, you had rightly decided you deserved better than the fragments of myself I was willing to share. I never told you about Daniel, just as I never told him about you. It was another compartment, another wall, and my greatest regret. I was planning to change that, to introduce you, to finally merge the separate worlds I'd created. Now, fate or circumstance has done what I couldn't in life. About Corvus. What began as financial irregularities in client accounts revealed itself as something far more sinister. Billions of dollars from government contracts funneled through shell companies into the pockets of those entrusted with public service. Cabinet secretaries, agency directors, corporate executives, all colluding to enrich themselves at taxpayer expense. I gathered evidence meticulously, planning to take it to Special Prosecutor Catherine West. Harrington warned me it was dangerous. He was right. By the time you read this, I may already be dead. Not from a heart condition, though that's what they'll make it look like. The Corvus principles have access to methods that ensure plausible deniability. If I've disappeared or died suddenly, know that it wasn't an accident or natural causes. The evidence in this safe is everything needed to expose them. Banking records, recorded conversations, internal memos they thought were destroyed. It's my insurance policy, and now it's yours. Trust Harrington, but verify everything. He walks a complicated line between worlds. Catherine West is the only authority figure guaranteed to be clean of Corvus influence. Her direct line is included in the documents. One last thing, the most important thing. In finding each other, perhaps you've discovered what I never could, that the walls we build to protect ourselves ultimately become our prisons. Daniel, you've always been stronger than me in the ways that matter most. Maya, you've always seen through pretense to what's real and essential. Together, you have what it takes to finish what I started and find justice. And perhaps in the process you might find something I never fully had. A life of wholeness, without compartments or walls. I've loved you both, in my broken way. Marcus. Maya wiped tears from her cheeks as Daniel lowered the letter, his own eyes glistening. For a moment neither spoke, the weight of Marcus's final message settling around them like the dust in the cabin. He knew, Maya said finally. He knew they would kill him. Daniel nodded slowly. And he prepared for it, leaving breadcrumbs he hoped would lead us here. He looked up at her. Together. The implication hung in the air between them, that somehow Marcus had anticipated their connection, had perhaps even counted on it. It seemed impossible, yet here they were, united by grief, purpose, and a growing bond neither had expected. We should examine the evidence, Maya said, gently returning them to the task at hand. If Harrington is right about how close they are behind us, we don't have much time." They spread the contents of the safe on the cabin's small table. The documents contained precisely what Marcus had described: bank records showing transfers to offshore accounts, internal memos detailing the manipulation of government contracts, and a log of recorded conversations stored on the digital recorder. Daniel plugged one of the USB drives into his laptop and found it contained video files, secret recordings of meetings where Corvus was discussed openly among its participants. They watched in shocked silence as high-ranking government officials and corporate executives calmly discussed the diversion of billions in public funds. "This is overwhelming," Maya said as the third video ended. "These people are at the highest levels of government and business. And they murdered Marcus to keep it hidden," Daniel added, his voice hard with anger and grief. Just then, they heard the distant sound of vehicles approaching on the dirt road. Maya rushed to the window, peering through the curtains. "Headlights!" she whispered urgently. "At least 2 vehicles." Daniel immediately began gathering the evidence, returning it to the waterproof case. "We need to go, now!" Maya helped him, frantically sorting the scattered papers and drives. "The back of the cabin. Is there another exit?" Daniel checked the floor plan. "A rear door leads to a path through the woods. There's an outbuilding about 100 yards back that isn't visible from the main clearing." The approaching vehicles were getting closer, the rumble of engines now distinct in the quiet forest night. Maya quickly packed the remaining evidence while Daniel transferred from his wheelchair to the cabin's single armchair. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, alarmed. "My wheelchair will slow us down on a forest path," he explained grimly. "You need to take the evidence and go. I'll create a diversion." "Absolutely not," Maya said firmly. "We're not separating. Your chair handled the rocky driveway, it can handle a forest path." Before Daniel could argue further, the vehicles pulled into the clearing, their headlights sweeping across the cabin windows, the engines cut off, and car doors slammed. "Too late to leave now," Daniel murmured, moving back to his wheelchair. "They'd spot us immediately." Maya's mind raced. "The safe room," she said suddenly. "What?" Marcus was paranoid about security. A cabin this remote, with evidence this valuable. He would have built in an escape route or hiding place. They searched frantically, aware of footsteps approaching the cabin. In the small bathroom, Maya noticed an irregularity in the tiled floor, a nearly invisible seam forming a square large enough for a person to pass through. "Here," she whispered, her fingers finding a recessed handle. The trapdoor opened silently on hydraulic hinges, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. Daniel looked doubtful. "My wheelchair." "There's a service elevator," Maya pointed out, spotting a small platform lift built into the side of the stairwell, designed for moving supplies or, she now realized, accommodating someone with mobility issues. They barely had time to gather the evidence and descend, closing the trapdoor above them, before they heard the cabin door being forced open. The safe room below was small but well-equipped, a generator, communications equipment, supplies, and most surprisingly, a tunnel leading away from the cabin. "He really did think of everything," Daniel whispered as they heard footsteps overhead. They could make out muffled voices as the intruders searched the cabin. Maya activated the communications panel, which included a security system with cameras monitoring the cabin's interior and perimeter. On the screens, they counted 4 men in tactical gear, methodically searching every corner of the cabin. One of them, clearly the leader, spoke into a phone. "No sign of them or the evidence. They were here. There's a car outside, and the safe is open. They can't have gone far." He paused, listening. "Yes, sir. Understood. We'll find them." Daniel examined the tunnel while Maya monitored the search above. "It looks like it extends at least 100 yards, probably emerging somewhere in the forest," he reported. "We could escape while they're still searching." Maya nodded, but her attention was caught by a new figure entering the cabin, a well-dressed older man with an air of authority. "Daniel," she called softly, "look!" On the security monitor, the newcomer surveyed the cabin with obvious frustration. When he turned toward one of the cameras, they both recognized him. "Secretary Porter," Daniel breathed, "the Secretary of Defense himself." They watched in stunned silence as Porter berated the search team leader. "Find them and the evidence," he ordered, his voice now clear through the room's audio system. "This ends tonight. No witnesses, no evidence, no loose ends. Understand?" The confirmation of cabinet-level involvement in Corvus and in the pursuit of Marcus's evidence was no longer theoretical. It was standing in the cabin above them, ordering their deaths. "We need to contact Catherine West now," Maya said urgently. Daniel nodded, pulling out the card Harrington had given them. Using the safe room's secure communications system, he dialed the number. After 2 rings, a woman's voice answered. "West. This is Daniel Whitman, Marcus Whitman's brother. I'm with Maya Reynolds. We have the Corvus evidence, and Secretary Porter is currently in a cabin above us, ordering his men to kill us and destroy the proof." A brief silence followed. "Your location?" Daniel provided the coordinates as Maya continued monitoring the search unfolding above them. "Stay hidden," West ordered. "I'm dispatching a team now, but they'll take at least 40 minutes to reach you. Can you remain concealed that long?" Maya and Daniel exchanged glances. "We'll try," Daniel replied, "but they're searching thoroughly." "The tunnel," Maya suggested after Daniel ended the call. "We could move further away through the tunnel, then surface in the forest." Daniel agreed, and they quickly gathered the evidence into the waterproof case. As they prepared to enter the tunnel, a notification from the security system drew their attention back to the monitors. A new vehicle had arrived, a familiar black sedan. James Harrington emerged, approaching the cabin with his hands raised in a gesture of peace or surrender. The search team immediately surrounded him, weapons drawn. "I'd like to speak with Secretary Porter," they heard Harrington say calmly. Porter appeared in the doorway. "James, this is a surprise." "Is it?" Harrington replied. "I figured you'd be handling this personally given what's at stake." Porter gestured for his men to lower their weapons. "Where are they, James? Where's the evidence?" "Gone," Harrington said simply. "I helped them escape hours ago. They're meeting with Catherine West as we speak, turning over everything Marcus collected. It's over, Richard." Porter's face contorted with rage. "You traitor! You were part of this from the beginning." "No," Harrington corrected. "I was part of Corvus at the beginning, when it was a legitimate program. I withdrew when you and the others turned it into a personal slush fund. Marcus discovered the truth independently. I simply helped ensure his evidence wouldn't die with him." Porter stepped closer to Harrington, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that the microphones barely picked up. "You're lying. They're still here somewhere. And when my men find them, they'll find you as complicit as the rest of us." "Perhaps," Harrington conceded, "but I've made my peace with that." As they watched this standoff unfold, Maya and Daniel realized Harrington was creating a diversion, drawing attention away from their hiding place and buying time for West's team to arrive. "We should go," Daniel whispered. "Use the tunnel while they're distracted." Maya nodded, but before they could move, a deafening explosion rocked the cabin above. On the monitors, they saw smoke and confusion. Harrington had apparently triggered some kind of device, creating chaos among Porter's team. In the disorientation that followed, distant sirens became audible, growing louder by the second. West's team had arrived sooner than expected, perhaps alerted by Harrington before he approached the cabin. The confrontation above ended in a blur of federal agents swarming the scene, Porter and his men surrounded and disarmed. Harrington, smoke-stained but alive, pointed federal agents toward the bathroom, where they discovered the trapdoor. When Maya and Daniel emerged with the evidence, West herself was on site, a formidable woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The Whitman evidence," she said, not quite a question. "Everything Marcus collected," Daniel confirmed, handing over the waterproof case. "Enough to bring down everyone involved in Corvus." West nodded, accepting the case with appropriate gravity. "Your brother was a brave man. Foolhardy, perhaps, in trying to handle this alone, but brave nonetheless." "He wasn't alone at the end," Maya said softly, her hand finding Daniel's on the handle of his wheelchair. "And neither are we." Hours later, after giving their statements and watching Porter and his associates taken into custody, Maya and Daniel found themselves alone on the cabin's porch. The first light of dawn was beginning to filter through the redwoods, casting the forest in a gentle golden glow. "What happens now?" Maya asked, the weight of the past day's events settling over her like a physical thing. Daniel took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "Justice for Marcus, trials for Porter and the others. West says we'll need to testify, but the evidence speaks for itself." "I meant with us," Maya clarified gently. Daniel's blue eyes met hers, serious but warm with an emotion that had been growing between them since that chance meeting in an airport food court. "I'd like to find out," he said simply. "If you would." Maya thought of Marcus's letter, his final wish that they might find what he never could, a life without compartments or walls. In the few days she had known Daniel, she had experienced more honesty, more genuine connection than in 3 years with Marcus. "I would," she replied, squeezing his hand. As the sun rose over the redwoods, painting the cabin in morning light, Maya felt the silver ring against her skin, no longer a symbol of secrets and lies, but a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead exactly where we need to go. Daniel pulled her gently toward him, and as their lips met in a kiss that felt both like an ending and a beginning, Maya knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. No walls, no compartments, just the whole unvarnished truth of who they were and what they might become. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.